which is pretty cool. And then we've also moved on to doing things like load modeling. So I know Fried hated the whole energy plus conundrum that was going on, but a lot of mechanical engineers like that. So just like how many people would say he was very practical, I've also tried to kind of infuse that practicality and think about how we solve the problem. So we've actually combined the EPC and we have Energy Plus, and we can translate inputs from the reduced order model directly into an Energy Plus model with all the fixins, and then run a daylight model that also impacts the Energy Plus model. That allows us to have like these very nice load models for mechanical engineers. We have like one of the newest pieces of interfaces of software that's been built in the last 20 years to help maybe automate those things, use templates. Again, more automation yielding better results, but kind of trying to say, how do we he always used to say, don't use a cannon to kill a flea. And I always am a big believer of that, and just making sure that at every point we're picking the right tool for the job as well. And then the last piece is also we build a drawing tool that allows us to make closed zone geometry automatically from any source of, like, whether that's Rhino, Revit, SketchUp, ArchiCAD, things like that. And so I guess I just kind of want to leave it here with you all. I know, obviously we're hiring a lot of people. We have 60 people on our team now. We're always looking for more building science folks, and I think that is kind of just a testament that this idea is now in the wild. All the things that he was pushing for many, many years, maybe too early from the standpoint of the rest of the world, but now the world is ready for those ideas, and all you all are here making that difference. And I'm just, I don't know, like I was a really poor kid from Indiana. Now, thanks to Fried and all his education and being able to go out there and build some of these things, like now I feel like I'm doing fairly well for myself. I'm just really thankful for everyone that was here who helped me. Of course, like Jason, got a shout out to him again. But there was a lot of folks that affected me and helped me along the way, and we're just super thankful for Georgia Tech and the program. And I know I'm personally thankful for everyone here, including Russell. He also helped me out many times as well. So all the professors here have definitely their thinking, and the things that were put in there, kind of drawing on Jason's things that in his kind of really nice presentation about, like, you can sometimes learn things along the way. We definitely have learned, I feel personally, I've learned a lot of things along the way as I was here that weren't just about energy modeling. I learned a lot of other aspects as well. So it's really thankful.
Hey, Patrick. Yeah, such a great talk. And, at the HPBL, we're all very proud of all the work you're doing in Cove Tool. We personally with you, the AirBAM project. It's so great. I wanted to actually just gauge you on how Fried kind of reacted when you kind of even were at a pilot stage of Cove Tool. How did maybe conversations with him inform your decisions of how you wanted to build it and how you wanted to take it? I just want to see kind of as well his influence into what you put in there.
Yeah, for sure. So when I first presented the idea, I kind of came to Fried and asked him about what he thought about other forms of the iterations of the ISO model. He was like, that's not really worth your time. I recommend just sticking with the ISO model or the EPC model from before, and just kind of like, it's reduced order. If you really want to go that next level, use Energy Plus. So he gave us a lot of like technical guidance and ideas, but most of all, he didn't think it was dumb, which I think is like something that's pretty cool. And he was like, yeah, you should definitely try it. And there's a lot of, like, I would say people who didn't at that time think it was a great idea to try to build a company around a new energy modeling software. And certainly there was a lot of folks that would come at conferences when I was presenting and really take a dump on it because it wasn't like Energy Plus or something. And so, like, I think that belief that Fried had in me in terms of like the fact that, this EPC idea, this reduced order modeling idea is a thing and it can work and it's faster and going to happen. Like, I kind of internalized all those things that he was telling me as I was starting the business, and it really helped kind of keep that confidence alive until other people recognized that it was also kind of cool. But I think in the early stages, it's just really important to have mentors like that that kind of give you the resources, but also keep believing in you, for sure.
I really hope someone else would want to engage because it's been me and Yasser so far, but I do have something that I want to also ask Jason about because this you've mentioned in the beginning EPC. I joined Georgia Tech as faculty and learned about EPC, and already all of the, let's say, Fried's constituents, like everyone who's worked with Fried has worked with EPC. My understanding is, and you have to correct me if I'm wrong, this is his brainchild. Like, this is the thing that he is contributing to our community. And if I understand this correctly, Cove Tool started, but is not continuing on, but started with EPC on the cloud. So if this is his brainchild, and you put it on the cloud, it is safe to say that Fried's brainchild, like his knowledge, is available to everyone, lives through Cove Tool. Jason, I'm asking because I don't know the relationship to APC, so I wanted to ask both of you, am I making an exaggeration or is that correct?
That's 100% correct. I think it was the Argonne ISO model, which was, I think, several people who came from the program and went to Argonne National Labs and wrote a Python version, which is now an open source engine that you can reference that we contribute to. But it's the kind of the Python version of the spreadsheet for EPC.
Yeah, it's not an exaggeration at all. And as Patrick mentioned, there are different copies of EPC out there. But Cove Tools, from what I'm hearing, by the way, you guys are awesome. Y'all are great. But from what I'm understanding, yeah, this is Fried out there. Thousands and thousands and thousands of places. I was talking to Patrick earlier. Fried, always wanted to get the EPC out there, but he was kind of busy, and getting it out there was kind of a hobby for him. And I'm just really happy to see Sandeep and Patrick have really lit the fuse on it, and it's just a rocket. It's fantastic. So that just makes my day, to see how it's gone out there, and in just what, 5 years?
Yeah.
Just 5 years.
And it's also free for students and faculty around the world. So there's, thousands and thousands of students now that are learning how to use basically reduced order modeling. They just don't know it because it's no longer in the spreadsheet, but the inputs are all the same. Everything's the same. So it's just really cool to see that too.
Yeah, and that's how simple the model is. I mean, you can put it in a spreadsheet, and that's all the model you need for a lot of the questions that you need to ask. And that was really the great thing about Fried is, he knew, he could take a scalpel when he needed a scalpel, and knew when to take a jackhammer when he needed to that. That was one of the things that's so great. I mean, it's it's easy, like I said, it's easy to be lazy and just fire up a howitzer at everything, and you don't need that. You really don't, and it's counterproductive. I mean, because once you start doing that, raises all sorts of other things that you don't know. And you have to do more guesswork. So, yeah, what Patrick and Sandeep are doing, that's Fried. That is Fried.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Hey, Patrick, thank you. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you. What I really appreciated in what you said is the fact that a lot of what's going on is that these tools don't talk to each other. Interoperability is a real challenge. And kind of in a similar field myself, I see that, like the expression, no man is an island entire unto himself. Ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. And so I think, if I'm understanding this properly, one of the things that you're doing now is the tremendous evolution is opening it up, so to speak, with the interfaces to all the ecosystem. You've created a platform that exists within an ecosystem. So my question is, are you finding more resistance, or are you finding now more receptivity in terms of interoperability with what you're doing with all these other tools, because you do operate in this ecosystem?
Yeah, I think really a lot of your kind of like hardcore energy modelers have recognized, they've had enough time now to recognize that you couldn't do every single project, and that be able to change the world with the pace of climate change, you really needed to be able to, give everyone something. So you raise all the baseline for all the folks. And so like understanding that, I think, has like transformed the minds of a lot of hopefully a lot of architects and engineers out there, so that the energy modelers in the team are now seen as like the tier 3 of people in the firm. And you got like tier 1 is like, you know, maybe someone using an EPC, and like giving people the, you know, Energy Plus model is maybe a tier 2 model, and then like level 3 is someone running, I don't know, like Modelica or something. You know, so like kind of like understanding that. I think everyone's really super accepting now of the idea that you can have multiple models that tell you different things at different levels of detail. And I think that is an idea that's now really, I think, much more accepted than it once was, even like a couple years ago, which is exciting. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Part of the way there, yeah. But we can talk more offline.
Yeah,
Thank you, though.
yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for all the great work that your team is doing.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Our next presentation is by Dr. Yunjun Chung.
Hello everyone. Can you hear me okay? And then can you see me okay?
We can hear you.
You can hear me? Nice. Could you start sharing my slide, please? So my introduction is part of my presentation, and I would appreciate it if you could share my screen now.
Yes, sure.
Thank you so much. Hello everyone, my name is Yunjun Jung, and then I really appreciate Professor Tarek Raka for giving me this opportunity. And then the purpose of my presentation today is to express appreciation to Professor Godfried Augenbroe, who guided me for the last 5 years. And then for today's presentation, I also brought the topic of EPC. And then my presentation topic is Professor Augenbroe's Building Energy Simulation Model, EPC. And then, next slide, please. And then before I start my presentation, I'd like to briefly introduce myself, because many of the audience probably doesn't know me or not even heard about me. So I'd like to briefly introduce myself. So I joined Georgia Tech in 2016. And then while I was at Georgia Tech, I belonged to 2 labs, High Performance Building Lab and Digital Building Lab. So from High Performance Building Lab, I was able to study physics-based building energy simulation, optimization, control topics. And from Digital Building Lab, I was able to learn data schema, data interoperability, especially BIM to BAM, and then some of data science topics. So after I graduated from Georgia Tech last summer, I joined Atlanta-based startup called Julia. And then this is the company where Professor Godfried Augenbroe used to work for after he retired. So our main task was to develop, update the existing EPC model. And then we worked, I really enjoyed working together with Professor Augenbroe, having extra meetings with him, and then learning some of his deep knowledge. So I really enjoyed working there. And I finished the EPC stuff in January 2020. And after I finished the EPC task, I joined the PNNL as a postdoc last month. Next slide, please. And then my presentation is comprised of a total of 4 parts. First one is EPC introduction, and then the second part is EPC update that Professor Augenbroe and myself worked together. And then the third part is how EPC is used for building integrated microgrid simulations. And then this work is mainly from my doctoral thesis materials. And then the last part is about the future of EPC and which work should be done in terms of the reduced order model in my field. And then could you move to the next slide, please? And then if I really briefly introduce the EPC, so in one sentence, EPC is a 5R resistances and 1C capacitance reduced order model based on the ISO standard published in 2008. And if you learned building energy simulation from Professor Godfried Augenbroe after around 2010, 2011, you are probably familiar with the Excel version of EPC. And then one characteristic of EPC is that it requires really less number of input parameters compared to existing software such as Energy Plus or IES-free or Modelica or etc. And then so it takes a lot less time to model one entire building. And then the accuracy of EPC is that from my experience, the EPC is off by around 5 to 15% compared to Energy Plus. So considering the fact that it takes such a little time to model entire building with the reliable result, so EPC has been really popular to many people. And next slide, please. And then we are moving to the next topic. And then so based on the given EPC model, which is shown in the left side, Professor Augenbroe and myself try to add new features in EPC while we are working for Julia, the company, the startup company. And then the new features we added was lighting dimmer, electricity battery, natural ventilation, EV, and monthly internal heat gain features. So by adding these new features, we are able to reinforce this EPC model. And the next slide, please. And then based on the Excel spreadsheet EPC, and the other task we are focusing on was to translate the Excel version of EPC into Python version, because so for one building energy estimation, Excel EPC is totally acceptable. The computation power performance is okay, but when you start dealing with many different buildings, and then when the many buildings are interconnected, we found the Excel EPC cannot perform as we expected in terms of the speed of calculation. That's why we focused on developing the Python version. And then after we developed the Python version, we are able to estimate hourly energy consumption within a second on the personal laptop. And on top of this Python EPC version, we also developed calibration, optimal design. Sometimes we refer to TechOpt, the sensitivity analysis, uncertainty analysis all in Python version. So by having all of these modules, we are able to not only estimate the building energy consumption, we are also able to enable the advanced building energy simulation, such as calibration or uncertainty analysis in Python rapidly. And then could you move to the next slide, please? And then if I really briefly introduce the how calibration and optimal design problem were solved, so we used the genetic algorithm. And if I introduce the genetic algorithm briefly in plain English, is that this algorithm generates a bunch of different populations and evaluate each of populations and then make a decision whether each population meets criterion or not. If not, conduct crossover or mutation. And if the criterion is met, this algorithm just stops. And then the right figure shows that this one is the calibration result from the updated EPC model. And then we are able to achieve the CVRMSE 3.7%, which is almost 9 to 10% better than the Azure standard. And the next slide, please. And then probably if you ever spoke with Professor Godfried Augenbroe, you probably listened at least once that once about the importance of uncertainty analysis in building energy simulation. And if you ever read some of his UQ papers, you probably remember that he used a lot of Morris method, which is shown on the top of the graph. And then we also developed the UQ module using the Monte Carlo simulation with the Latin hypercube sampling method. So by having these modules, we are able to quantify confidence in building energy use predictions. And then next slide, please. And then we are moving to the next part, how EPC is used for the building integrated microgrid simulations. So recent research agenda from the DOE in terms of grid interactive buildings focuses on solving optimization and control problems of many buildings. And then there are a total of 4 different categories or components in this research agenda, which are efficiency, flexibility, smart, and connection. And then if we see the efficiency part first, so this component is mainly about which building should install high R value or which building should have high efficient appliances, etc., etc. And then the flexibility component deals with how building loads are dynamically controlled and optimized. And then the smart component deals with how buildings respond to events such as power outage, or how buildings optimally manage behind the meter distributed energy resources. And then one of the really important parts of grid interactive efficient building research topic is about the connection. So in the past, our field were mainly focusing on estimating one building energy consumption, but nowadays people want to estimate many buildings with the inclusion of EV, smart appliances, power grid, HVAC system, etc., all together. So this research agenda asks us that how do we run these complex simulations concern all these components? And then could you move to the next slide, please? And then this research agenda led Professor Augenbroe and myself to this objective sentence. So our thesis objective was to automate design optimization and control for grid interactive buildings in simulation. There is the animation, so could you click once, please? And yeah, nice, thanks. And then, so basically we translate the efficiency part into the design optimization problem. And then we translated the flexibility and smart part into control keyword. And then for the connection part, we translated into the grid interactive buildings keyword. And then the key part of this sentence is automation. So what I mean by automation is that could you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, and then could you hit twice, please? Yeah, one more. Yeah, and then so what I mean by automation is that let's suppose that there is a simulation user who wants to run simulations with 10 buildings, 1 PV, 1 electric battery, district system, electric vehicle with a given rule-based control. And then also let's suppose that there is another simulation user who wants to simulate 3 buildings, 1 PV, 1 electric battery with optimal control and design optimization. So before we finished our thesis, preparing this simulation is based on manual work, meaning that modelers should make connections between each building component, PV component, other component with control logics and optimization logics. But by having a data schema inside the software, we are able to fully automate developing this kind of complex simulations. But I didn't bring the schema part in this thesis because if I start introducing the schema part, this presentation gets so longer. So instead, could you turn to the next slide, please? Yeah. So instead, what I brought was that I brought one of the test cases in our thesis. And in this case study, our objective or the problem we are trying to solve was to find the optimal area of PV and the optimal capacity of electric battery with the optimal control of cooling set point in each 3 buildings. And the purpose of this analysis is that when power outage scenario occurs, how buildings should behave by controlling the cooling set point and by installing the optimal PV area and optimal electric battery. And then so we assume that there was a 1.5 days of power outage scenario in the middle of summer in California. Could you turn to the next slide, please? So this is the result page. Basically, this slide, what this slide says is that with the optimally installed PV and electric battery, and then optimally control the cooling set point, this building stock can overcome the power outage scenario. And that this simulation is really challenging for other existing building energy simulation software. And then could you turn to the next slide? So the next part is about talking about the future of EPC. So I have talked really good things about EPC so far. So if somebody asks me like, oh, so EPC is the perfect software, and then is this the God-made software? Well, there are a lot of strengths in EPC, but there are also some weaknesses we found together. The first weakness is that there are too many min-max if-else statements in the EPC equations. So this is okay for just estimating building energy use, but when you try to conduct optimization and control, especially optimal control in EPC, this having too many min-max if-else statements makes the optimization problem to mixed integer problem, which makes the problem harder to solve and longer to solve. So this is one of the weaknesses in EPC. And then the second weakness, in my view, is that EPC wasn't modeled in the state space model form. So this is weakness when EPC tries to import the existing control or optimization libraries. So in my view, future remaining work on the EPC or reduced order building energy simulation model is that I think researchers in our field should still try to figure out how much physics is required in building energy simulation software to make a robust decision. So EPC is 5R1C, but probably 6R3C outperform EPC or 3R2C. But as far as I know, this type of work hasn't been done in our domain. So I thought that this is really required in our domain. And then the next thing is that I think that it is necessary to make the robust reduced order model open source, because compared to Energy Plus, we can download Energy Plus within 5 minutes after Googling Energy Plus, but EPC is quite limited for users. So I think this is just my thought, but I think number one research topic is quite essential to conduct research. Yeah. And then could you turn to the next slide, please? And then could you hit one more? Could you click one? Yeah. So it was really great to get to know Professor Augenbroe and to be guided by him for the last 5 years. And it was a really great sadness to hear his health was getting worse while we are working together on EPC and then my thesis. But still, he impacted a lot on my life, and he I was able to grow up with his guidance. So I will always try to keep his philosophy in building energy simulation alive. And then I will always try to remember his true dedications to not only myself and but also to all of his students. And then I will always cherish all the memories with him, and then try to remember all the lessons from Professor Fried Augenbroe. And then this, could you turn to the next page? And this is the end of my presentation. And yeah, I think we still have some Q&A session, but if you have any questions and discuss anything, so please reach out to the email address. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening. Yeah.
Hey, Yoon-Jun, very nice seeing you after a while. You were always such a great addition to the HPBL. I just wanted to actually ask, have you had a conversation with Fried or his passing about some ideas he wanted to improve on APC, some, a direction he wanted to kind of take it with, and if you or any of the others that work with it are actually trying to build on that, just kind of in a way honoring his legacy and seeing how you can keep pushing forward with it?
Oh, yeah, yes, sir. It's really good to see you in a while. And then thank you so much for asking this question. So I remember that when I had a meeting not this January in 2021, he mentioned some of the new features required in EPC. And I took a note, thankfully, at the time, and then we implemented some of them together, and then I implemented by myself some of the other features in EPC. And then some of them I introduced in the previous slide, such as natural ventilation, electric battery, or et cetera, et cetera. And then some of the features, there are some of the features I didn't mention. But yeah, I think we had pretty good concrete plans how EPC should move forward. And then, yeah, so yeah, and then I hope I can answer your question. Yeah.
Hey, Yoon-Jun, this is Tyler Blay. Glad to see that you're joining us over at P&L, and I look forward to working with you. One question that I had for you is, how do you see Fried in your work moving forward? And also in, maybe not even necessarily in your work and your job, but how you view the world and also how you want to further your own research moving forward?
Yeah. So yeah, Tyler, thank you so much for asking your question. I'm also really excited to work with you, learn from you, and congratulations on your successful thesis defense yesterday. I enjoyed a lot. So answering your question, so Professor Fried Augenbroe challenged me to putting the EPC into the next level, and the next level we thought was that how EPC can be utilized for the grid interactive efficient buildings, and then how control and optimization layers can be implemented in EPC, and this was a big challenge for us. So the methodology we took was that we argue that data schema is really necessary for the complex simulation, such as, for example, when you have a PV electric vehicle or et cetera, having the data schema inside the software is really essential. Yeah, and then and what was the second part of your question?
The second question was, how exactly do you feel like you implemented the lessons and the experiences you had with Fried in your life, and also the way you see yourself moving forward in your career?
Oh, yeah. So basically, one of the great lessons I learned from Professor Augenbroe is that he he guided it in a way that thinking ability is really important uh, in order to do really great research. So in the past, I only focus on the more about the software development, coding, or just learning some engineering topics. But I remember that he tries to make me think better and think in a deeper way. And then I still try to learn his lessons and then try to follow his guidance. Yeah, but it's still challenging for me. Yeah.
It will come with time. Thank you, Yoonjun.
Yeah. Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you very much, Doctor. And now we will have a break till 10:50. Thank you.
Sandeep, can you hear us?
Can you hear
Okay,
me?
we're ready for you. So you'll turn your camera on, we'll put you on the screen, and we're ready.
I have my camera on. Can you see them?
Oh yeah, we can see you now. We can see you now.
Wonderful.
It looks like it's lovely where you are. I can see the wind. I can see the wind, and you definitely don't see the wind. So
Oh yeah. I've been following along since the morning. This has been a pretty awesome event. Like I really have enjoyed everyone's talks so far.
absolutely, and great to have you. So now we'll put you on the screen. One moment.
Okay.
Okay, everyone, we're going to start now. And again, no introductions. You can go ahead, Sandeep.
Okay, great. Well, fantastic. Thanks, everyone. This is so wonderful to join in. I would typically join in person in the same conference room because I am Atlanta-based, but this is my first vacation, which has been pre-planned for a very long time ago. So I'm currently hanging out with the waves, but have been following along all of your all's wonderful talks since the morning. I'll start with a brief introduction. So I'm Sandeep Ahuja. I'm the CEO and co-founder at CodeTool. I'll place the introduction with my time since after I met Fried and got mentored by him and all the many things that he has helped me accomplish in my career thus far. So after I met Fried, so if you call this a career, this is the curve that it took as soon as I met Fried and after I went to the program. So to put it in a little bit more measurable terms, since meeting Fried, I have presented at the UN Environment Assembly. Since meeting Fried, I have become the Forbes 30 under 30. Since meeting Fried, I have started and exited a successful sustainability consulting company. Since meeting Fried, I have created and grown a software company called Tool from 0 to 15,000 users and $0 to $30 million. So there's a lot that has happened in a pre-Fried and a post-Fried world and his influence on my life. And the thing that I want to talk about today is there's three core topics that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about the actual journey of meeting him and how he helps me think through things, not necessarily the nitty-gritties of energy modeling, not really the details of the performance modeling, but really how to think about things and how to make decisions about these things, because I apply it to everything, not just performance modeling, because it definitely does extend to other things. So I did meet Fried long time ago when right before I started the program. He was visiting India. I had no intentions of flying. I met him. I had full intentions of applying. Also, being a person that puts all eggs in one basket, there's no other program or university or professor that I wanted to study with. So I applied to come to the high performance program here at Georgia Tech and be Fried students. It was like, okay, it's this or nothing. It was this. I'm thankful for that. And one of the first things that I learned from him was how to focus on things that mattered. For example, if I look at it from purely energy modeling side of things, it was all about, if we look at the actual energy model, how do I make sure that I'm focusing on things that matter and not getting myself biased over unnecessary details that don't really matter? How do I use that same methodology with everything else? It's true for everything, right? Like to keep your eye on the prize, wherein, for example, if I'm making a logical decision of what to do about something, for example, when I was raising capital for CodeTool, this is the first round of capital, not the most recent round, the Series A round, which was about $5.7 million. I'd never raised that amount of money before. Had done $1 million before, which was already a really big deal at that time in my mind. But when we got to raising $5.7 million, I had two term sheets. Now, term sheet is, the offer that a venture capital firm will give you to tell you, here's the terms, this is how we value your company, this is how much of it we'll buy, here's the money we'll give you, here's how many board seats, yada, yada, right? So I had two options in my hands. Both seemed competitive. Some had some pros, some had some cons. But what I really appreciated about the first principle thinking that I learned with Freed was I focused on things that mattered. So I was able to think about, okay, where is their strategic alignment? Because that is the thing that really mattered. If me and my investors were not on the same page in how we felt about climate change and how we felt about building impact to that climate change, their support would end as soon as there would be any plateau in the revenue. I mean, every startup has good times and bad times. We were having a great time. What about the times when we're not going to have a great time? If the investors don't believe in climate change or in the fact that this can have an impact, well, their support would definitely end. So we went the route of finding a person and a partner that aligned with us from a mission standpoint, which I thought was incredibly meaningful. And we absolutely have gone through times where we've scaled like this, and there's times where the curve has been slightly, less vertical. We're always scaling, we're always growing, but the curve of that really determines how excited a venture capital fund is about the actual venture. So that's a real life example of one of the ways that his thinking helps me in driving some of the decisions. The other thing that he always said, and I've used in numerous pitches, even when I went to present at the UN Environment Assembly, the point that I was trying to make is that we are all simulators of reality. No one person of us has superhuman ability, at least I don't, superhuman abilities to predict the future. So cannot predict the future, can simulate it as close as I can. And he told that to me so many times. He made us do exercises to go to the actual, the oldest building on the campus, build an EQuest model of it, build a design builder model of it, build an open studio model of it, and then build an EPC model of it, and be like, okay, now how do you compare? Is it the same? Is it the different? How similar is it? What's not similar about it? And I really think that it truly brought back to life for me, really what matters, what it doesn't. I know that the title of my talk is going from 0 to 30 million, so I definitely want to be able to deliver on that title, in addition to all of this context on how he helps me think through any of these things. I mean, even today. So we started the company right out of school. Well, actually, I take that back. So right out of school, we started, me and Patrick both, we started working at a large architectural firm. One of us had a job as a sustainability consultant. One of us did not have a job as a sustainability consultant. We were like, you know what? It doesn't matter if it's in our job description or not. We're going to go talk to every single principal in this firm and ask them if they need sustainability consulting. So we basically banded together to serve as an in-house consulting team. They had no fee for us. They had no budget for us. We're like, this is fun to do. Why wouldn't we do it? So we started taking elevator rides up and down, trying to talk to other principals within the firm, just try to get a good understanding of what projects they were working on. Every time I took an elevator ride, I came back with a project. Gave me immediate skills for sales and marketing on how to sell the services that I was offering. Of course, at the time, I was a salaried employee of a firm, was making no extra money for doing this. It was just fun to do it, so why wouldn't I? And then after the initial traction, the firm was like, oh, this is great. Let's fund your team and let's have you bring on more team members. So we grew that internal team. And I was like, okay, this is really fun. Let's stop doing it internally and let's see what the real outside world is like and how much we can help and continue to bring performance to the rest of the firms. What are they doing? And then built our consulting practice from scratch. And that was probably one of the hardest things that I have had to do in my life so far. It was day one of consulting practice, did not walk away with any existing projects, did not walk away with any existing clients, downloaded a list of every single architecture firm in Georgia. It was like, I don't know, 1,000-person phone list, called every single one of them. It was like, hey, do you need sustainability consulting services? Until one of them did. And I was like, okay, great, there's our first project. And we grew 500% in the first year after that first project because, well, when you have less revenue, percentages are easy to mask, but also we're doing good work because we were continuing to use Freed's first principle thinking to make sure we're focusing on things that mattered and not getting bogged down with things that we have truly no control on in the design phase, because there's so many things we have no control on. We can keep tweaking the inputs till the end of time, but what are they really going to do if we can't control the construction process, which as a sustainability consultant, having worked over hundreds of sustainable projects, I've not ever gone to the site to inspect. Did the contractor deploy the systems that I put in the energy model exactly? So there's so much that I have no control on. So not to say that it doesn't matter, but to say to focus on things that I do have control on. So built out the sustainability consulting team after that. We were a team of 10, worked on hundreds of projects, tons of projects here in the Georgia Tech campus as well. That's always the most fun, is to come back on campus, the new student center, the police station, the Dalney building. I mean, there's tons and tons of projects, and that's, to me, those are the projects that I'm the most proud of, because I love Georgia Tech. It's awesome. I'm a super fan, is probably a way to put it. And then basically started automating our entire consulting practice. So being a person driven by, of course, having an impact, but also finding the easiest, fastest path to revenue, just how my business brain works. I was like, okay, if we can run an Energy Plus model in 40 hours, we can run EPC in 1 hour. What happens if I automate EPC? Can I run it in 15 minutes? Wouldn't that be something? Because, I mean, human expense is the most expensive part of a consulting practice. And that's exactly what we did. Just automated everything, made everything come faster. At the time for profitability, at the time for efficiency, at the time for democratization. But little did I know that there was such a need in the industry at the time. And within 30 days, we had 70 beta testers who wanted to test the platform, poke holes in it, buy into it. And since then, we've grown the community so much to the point where it's taught in pretty much all the leading universities. It's used by all of the leading firms, all the three-letter firms and all the non-three-letter firms, right? I mean, y'all know what I'm talking about. And it's just so exciting to see the sheer change in life, the sheer change in career trajectory that one person can have, and the program as a whole can have, and the guidance that an entire institution can have. And I'm just truly grateful, and that's everything that I had for us today.
Hey Sandy, how you doing? I hope you're enjoying your vacation. You, of course, you've deserved it with all the good work you're doing at Cove Tool. I had
the Symposium makes it even better. Like now I get the waves and all of the people that I've got to listen to. So really grateful for it.
That glass looks amazing. I just wanted to actually ask how some of Fried's ideas are going to inform how you're going to take Cove Tool ahead. If there's some of the things you kind of even discussed before that, were never even in EPC, and it was kind of a vision. And if you find yourself, at a point where the legacy has to continue through constituents like yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think about it a lot. I thought about it when we started the company. I sat down with him and I was like, here's what I'm thinking about, Fried. What do you think? And gave him a presentation. He had tons of technical questions, found the answer to every single one of those technical questions. And then we continued the conversation, and he was like, you know what, this makes a lot of sense. Let's give it a go. And as I thought about scope, so this is one thing, like he, of course, had the influence, the ability, like when he said something, people believed it. He had so much expertise that he brought to the table. I, on the other hand, starting out as a young brown woman, did not have that level of influence that when I say something, people just believe it because I'm saying it. So I had to go to the difficult path of really having all my ducks in a row from a technical standpoint so that I could stand with anyone with no matter how much gray hair they had, that I could have a pretty detailed conversation with them and be able to showcase that, okay, no, this makes sense. The thing that I have found to be of immense value, and not something that, at least not something I discussed with Freed, to be completely honest, was the idea of taking the early stage and mixing it in with later stages, because that's where I think that the true influence can really happen. Because I mean, sure, if I do tons of great designs in the early stages, what if it's a completely different consultant who's doing the later stage modeling, who doesn't even care about everything that I did in the early stages? And because I want to continue the EPC methodology all the way up to design development, the only way to do that is to run consistent validation models, energy plus EPC, energy plus EPC, so that it's no longer two disparate platforms. It's no longer two disparate methodologies, because there are two very different camps, as you know, the reduced order and the non-reduced order. And my ultimate goal is to really use Freed's thinking and merge them together. And that's kind of the only reason why a lot of Cove Tool, while uses the EPC ISO methodology for the optimization and, running hundreds and thousands of simulations on the cloud, but it still allows teams to go all the way through Energy Plus and do their compliance level modeling, because I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a both and just a happy marriage between the two.
Hi, Sandeep. This is Tyler Paulette. We've met a few times before. I was one of the last PhD students admitted under Freed, and I actually connect with one of your experiences where you said you did not apply to any other grad programs. You put all of your eggs in one basket, and actually that's what I did too for my PhD. I did not apply anywhere else, and there was just something about Freed that told me this is the place I want to go, and if I cannot be here, then I won't go to grad school at all. So in your opinion, what is it about Freed that really made you decide that Georgia Tech was the place for you and you were not willing to do anything else?
I think it was a fewfold, and I'm glad you can relate to the experience. Yeah, for me it was either grad school with Freed or no grad school. Those were my two options. So thank goodness for grad school. But either way, the thing that really convinced me, and this was within the first 30 minutes of our conversation of having met ever, because we had communicated via email. He was like, hey, I'm going to be in India. I'm going to be passing through Delhi, which is where I was living at the time. I was like, okay, great. Tell me which hotel you're going to be. Let's meet in the lobby. So I went and we met in the lobby. And in the first 30 minutes, he talked about how the program really brought together the data part to the architecture, because at the time I was a practicing licensed architecture professional. I wasn't doing anything else. I always wanted to bring in data, but I had no way to understand what data or how that matters. I knew that buildings were a big component of carbon emissions. I didn't know how I could, as an architect, have any role to play in any of that. So I left that conversation immensely inspired, but I also got the confidence from him that if I struggled, he wouldn't let me struggle, that he would help me, that he was going to not let go. He was not going to let me fail. And it's because I had that confidence in the first 30, 60 minutes of our conversation, it was pretty much no risk. I knew that if I went and got in, he would not let me fail. Couldn't ask for anything better than that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sandeep. It was nice to hear the journey you have been through. And now we will be having a Sol Haroon for the next presentation.
Got it. Okay, here. Can you guys hear me? All right. It's okay. It's all right. Yeah. Well, thank you all. I'm Sol Haroon, the National Director of Renewables at McKim & Creed, a large national firm on that does infrastructure, renewables, and also including building simulation as well. So I'd like to take you on my personal journey as to how that began with Fried 6 years ago, in fact, and also a homage to truly the great influence that he was on all of us and what it meant to me personally. So embracing uncertainty, embracing resiliency. So 6 years ago, I was here at Georgia Tech in the EE, kind of doing some work in renewables at the solar department of electrical engineering. And Fried happened to sit in to one of my talks. Oh, is it not in full mode? Okay. Did I do something? Great. So Fried happened to sit in to one of my talks at that time when I was presenting on that. And he said, I'd like to talk to you. I said, okay, where? Somewhere in engineering, I guess. He said, no, in architecture. I said, oh, I don't know anything about architecture. So he said, no, just come over to my office. And then I remember going down. Can we make it in full screen mode, or if that's okay? No worries. Thanks. And then I remember walking down this very corridor, the Hinman Research Building. And then one of the first things I saw, is it not going in full screen? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, this is my view of it. Okay. Apparently, I need to turn around. Okay. So here we are. Is it not? Sure, no problem. Please stand by. We're having technical difficulties. No, but regardless. So I was walking down that corridor in the Hinman Research Building, and you'll see the picture of that here. Or I was not driving that car. It was. I can only wish. It's now electric. No, it isn't. So I was also doing work in electric vehicles. So, brand new presentation. Always start with a clean slate. Here we go. Okay. All right. So one of the first things I saw outside his office, or the Ph.D. office next to him, was IUQ. I think you guys have all seen that. I think that sign is still up. Blink, it will all flash. Your life is flashing by your eyes right now. Mine certainly is. Okay. So here we are, back again. So this was good. Now I can see that. They are in alignment. One of the few times in my life, in fact, that happens. So I saw that I heart UQ, and I wondered, wow, what is UQ? And so anyway, so I kind of put that in the back of my mind. So we sat down, he started talking, and he said, I really appreciated your systems approach in terms of connecting things together. That, yeah, I think things are interconnected together. It's really important for me. And I came to realize that Fried, in all his humility, but in all his brilliance too, truly understood how things interacted together. He made you ask the fundamental questions as to why things matter. And that's what really inspired me to go with him. So he wanted me to do a PhD. I was being a bit rambunctious, so I said, can I just audit your program? And he said, sure, just sit in a few classes. 1 year later, I'm still auditing the program. So I said, hey, may I do a master's? And he said, absolutely. So what Fried was able to see is no matter where you are coming from, whether you're a newly minted undergrad or a graduate or a working professional like myself for many years, he could elicit and bring out from you your strengths. And he would also understand where your weaknesses were. And he would help you bridge that. He would help you ask the questions that really matter, whether it's in academia, whether it's your clients, or the like. So sometime later, I finally figured out what UQ did actually mean: uncertainty quantification, the characterization, the quantitative characterization of risk and uncertainty, and how to mitigate and that in life itself, in real world situations. So I'd like to kind of take you on that journey of UQ of resiliency, of renewables. So one of our greatest challenges right now is climate change. You heard Sandy, Patrick, many others talk about that. And this is the climate uncertainty loop, meaning that we're trying to limit the amount of greenhouse gases that we're emitting. But that will affect in terms, based on what we emit, the average temperature rise in response to those. That in turn affects here we are right here. That in turn affects the natural ecosystem, which in turn affects what our response will be, and so on. And that there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty in all of that. We know it's a real issue. We know we're facing it. What do we do about it? So my particular field and work and research happens to be in power, and that's why I was in EE. Fried wanted that perspective of an electrical engineer of renewables in building science. And so my thesis was optimizing varying building loads, optimizing microgrids with varying building loads. So matching load side with generation. So I had focused so much on generation much of my life, I wanted to understand load side and the pairing of the two. So we heard last year these crippling blackouts in Texas, and that's happening everywhere now as well. In fact, they were 3 minutes away from a complete grid shutdown. That is uncanny and unbelievable. Our grid is ailing, it's failing, it needs help. This is happening everywhere throughout the United States. Power outages are only on the rise. We know that. We move that now to the load side, the built environment. Buildings matter. They really do. The work that Patrick and Sandeep and Yunjun and many of you are doing is really vital in order to move that needle forward. 40% of energy, of resources and water are consumed in the built environment. 25% of global water consumption and so on. So there's an opportunity both in new development but also in retrofit to truly make a difference there. So Project Drawdown started in 2014. This is a nonprofit. Some of you may have heard of that. Dr. Marilyn Monroe is working from here at Georgia Tech in public policy to coordinate with the national-wide Project Drawdown. So the two areas that are of interest to me, and where to also Fried, where generation and built environment. So we can shift production, look at alternative sources of energy, but of course the first thing is reduce, optimize, enhance your efficiency. And that's where tools like Cove Tool come in. You can pay me $10 later. Where using these tools can really get us, EPC and others can get us to where we're trying to go. And of course, we also want education. We want awareness. Almost everything comes by starting to ask the right questions. Start with awareness, as Fried would say. And also, I remember what he would say, well, we'll get to the modeling portion later on. The top 10 solutions here in climate change often are, according to Project Drawdown, are related to better management, better understanding what you have right now, not creating new stuff necessarily. There is some stuff about solar farms, you can see there, rooftop solar as well, but that's not in the top solutions, as you can see. Add to that, this article from Scientific American is infrastructure upgrade. We are now going through an infrastructure bill that you guys know about. Be efficient as well. So look at existing opportunities that you have right now before even tackling new development, new construction. So that moves us to resiliency. So, here we are. Resiliency. You've all heard of the term resiliency. Quite simply, it's elasticity, the ability to bounce back, the capacity to recover difficulties. A formal definition here is, I'm very good at this, it seems right here, is ability of a system to adjust its functioning prior to, during, or following changes, disturbances. Let's see how resilient I am, it seems. So that it can sustain required operations under both expected and unexpected conditions. Using that, we can look at what's going on in terms of energy generation, and I'll pair it back to existing building loads, what the opportunity there are as well. This is the area that I work in right now, is energy generation, but also mated with load side too. In the 10 years that I started ago in solar, 10 plus years, let's say 2011, 2012, thereabouts, it was very expensive to do that. The cost have come down an order of magnitude, such that solar is now the cheapest form of new generation. Utility scale, to some extent rooftop, and so on. That's remarkable. In less than one generation, half a generation, I guess, you have seen solar take the stage. So the opportunities there are, sure why that didn't quite clean. That's okay, it's okay, leave it alone, that's fine. Is we're seeing a double uptake of installations of solar. New and new, the forecast you can see right here, a twofold increase in Southeast alone. When I started in solar, again, around 10, 12 years ago, we had around 4 megawatts of installed capacity. Don't worry about what that is. A megawatt is kind of a way of gauging how much, the nameplate of a generation system. We now have 3,000 megawatts in Georgia alone, from 4 megawatts to 3,000 megawatts. In anybody's book, that is a remarkable progress. Now what's going on is batteries, energy storage. The prices of that have also been dropping considerably in the span of 10 years. So it's lagging from solar, just like what happened with solar. Battery storage is also dropping down as well in terms of cost. So the deployment is, that's okay, I'm not sure why these slides are coming that way, but the deployment is enormous. Oh, I know, because you have to download it, but it's okay. So those opportunities are, these slides are not quite, that's okay, that's fine. So there's a tremendous opportunity, not just from economics, but looking at pairing batteries, looking at load side, looking at generation, the interoperability, the interconnectivity of what were disparate technologies coming together. So there's risk mitigation. These are some of the reasons why companies want to do, why utilities and companies want to do solar, renewables, distributed energy generation, batteries, microgrids, electric vehicles, all of that combined together. So we go from something like this, which is what's called a basic line diagram of connecting solar panels, solar modules, with an inverter, the load side, the panel board, switchgear, and so on. So this is a very simple model. Solar is actually quite simple at its heart. That's one of the beauty of it, beautiful things about it. And it scales at huge scales. A utility scale from residential is essentially the same thing. So we go from what is essentially a dumb diagram, so to speak, a dumb system, but a great, simple, dumb system to something like this. This is called a microgrid. And a microgrid, in this case, and we heard Yoon Jun talk about that as well, is the ability to harness and pull together all these different components, your controllable loads, your building side, your CHP, combined heat power, your PV, your energy storage, all of that together, and orchestrate, make it function like a symphony. So I had the opportunity under Fried to work on a fabulous building called the Candida Building of the Living Building, the Candida Building of Innovative Sustainable Design. How many of you guys have visited that building on campus? Many of you, that's fantastic. So under Fried's tutelage, I got to model this using EPC and Design Builder, sorry, at that time, but Cove Tool will be the tool to use now, of course. Another shameless plug. But so we got to model that building and see what its performance would be like that. And that's how you want to kind of approach things. You can't do well with something that you don't have data or quantify. And Fried would say, please, yes, let's model that. One of his expressions, and I think Jason's as well, was all models wrong but some are more useful than others, by George P.E. Box or something like that. Another one that I really appreciated was, I think, from Niels Bohr, is prediction is very difficult, especially if it's about the future. But that doesn't stop us from doing it. And looks like I've lost control. We are doing it in live. All right, thanks. All right, so the building that is right there is situated on First Drive and State Street, if you haven't visited it. So when we modeled that, we looked at the Revit model with Lord X Sargent, with Newcomb and Boyd, and we essentially wanted to we wanted to see what its energy use intensity, site energy use intensity would be. This is kind of like a building scorecard. This is a way to gauge the miles per gallon, or the way to gauge how a building is really performing. And I think many of you, of course, are familiar with this. So this is what came out, one of the things that came out from that. We could see that the building, the basic premise here is that you want this column to be less than this column. The column on the left here is your consumption. The column on the right is your PV production. So it's a very simple, easy way to gauge that, yes, the building will truly be net positive. And the living building standard is a very stringent, meaning that you just don't get it. You don't, what I mean by that, sorry, you don't just get the certification once you've completed the building. You have to prove after 1 year that it truly has been operational. So after 1 year, the building was actually more than 200% net positive. I guess COVID hit and very few people ended up using the building, so that certainly contributed to that. So the EUI on that building was somewhere between 32 to 34 or so in the imperial units of kBTU per foot squared per year. And we also modeled over time. So you don't just model for today, you model for tomorrow. And of course, what you also want to do, now tying this back to uncertainty quantification, is risk analysis. So various tools that we use to put in probability distribution functions of different parameters to see what would happen. And you can see the EUI on 33, 34 with a 95% certainty that it will be within a certain range. Well, in fact, it blew it completely. This is without PV, just to be clear. This is purely the load itself, no photovoltaic. Of course, the EUI would be 0 or negative once you put PV on that. So you can see completely, within that range. We've blown it out much more now with PV, of course. Here is, once you've done that, as Fried would say, you've asked those fundamental questions, you've characterized what you have, then you start putting in PV. Only then does it make sense to put in something like photovoltaics. We put in a 330 kilowatt system that generated 450 megawatt hours of energy per year the first year. And then also the consumption was around 350, 340, 330, I think, megawatt hours per year. So at that time, while I was modeling the building, I was approached to design the PV. So it was a really curious thing. As a double E, I got to actually design the entire PV on that building, and I was very, very grateful for that. And I owe Fried a debt of gratitude for that. So I got to see it from the start, building, to the end. And what's on the right is what's called a single line drawing, which basically represents the interconnectivity of the different parts of that building, the electrical diagram of how the PV comes together. So where does that take us? There's more text there, but it's not showing up. That's okay. As we look to the future, we are seeing interconnection. We are seeing opportunities for bringing together things like generation, like load, in the format of, let's say, smart city, in the format of smart mobility, smart living. The Internet of Things is really about the Internet of people, the Internet of data, the Internet of services. This is the true interoperability. We live at a time, as Fried would say, where we are seeing convergence, where we are seeing everything come together. So key takeaways is, as you approach the design of anything, step back, as Fried would say. Ask the fundamental questions of yourself, of your design, of your system, of your clients. Consider the whole system and its interactions. Get your raw data. Without data, you can't prove anything. That's a hunch. Fine, go with your hunch, but get your data and put it through first order preliminary models. Don't get bogged down in zoning 100 zones or stuff like that. Start simple. Reduce, economize, optimize, rinse and repeat. Then consider energy generations. And above all, make your solution something relatable. Make it tell. So, in honor of Fried, I came across this quote. Life is not about how fast you run or how high you climb, but how well you bounce. May I add to that? In the face of uncertainty and with resiliency. Thank you. Sure.
And Jason.
Hey, Saul. Nice talk.
Hey, Jason.
I think seeing things whole is a really big theme that's coming out through here. I like the way you put that. I have a question. I was talking to Patrick offline in one of the breaks, and he was mentioning that there was, a lot of money coming into being resilient and adaptive and mitigating against climate change. And a lot of it, if I remember right, is coming from insurance. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. And that's on the architecture side. I wonder if and we've seen, how solar is coming out. It's getting so much cheaper. Why wouldn't you do it? I'm wondering if you're seeing anything, on the grid side, if there's any similar kind of investment that might be happening that, might help stitch all this stuff together. I guess grid is hard to do, especially, continental stuff, but I'm just wondering if you're seeing any uptick in interest in rebuilding the grid and as well as microgrids as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. What I'm seeing on the grid now is typically the grid has been unidirectional, meaning that you have this utility that pushes all that power out, and you simply sit back, enjoy the clean power. But now what's happening is the commercial, the C&I space, end users are getting involved in creating power and pumping it back to the grid. So what utility operators are realizing is, whereas utility scale solar is still vital because you can do things at scale there, they want to also encourage microgrids. They want to encourage distributed energy resources and have that coupled back to create a more resilient network. So it is less and less now this idea of a big top-down approach. It is the top-down meeting the bottom-up and connecting there. But our grid is definitely ailing, as you say. It is suffering. So we are investing in infrastructure and upgrading aspects of that grid, but it is no longer just the utility doing that. So banks and other companies are getting involved in trying to bring the funds and the money to all aspects of the grid, from the C&I, the commercial industrial space, to the utility space. So it is definitely happening. I think it's happening a bit late, but here we are, and realizing that we've been slapped in our face one too many times, and now we have to respond. So yes, there are a lot of invested parties, PPA arrangements, power purchase agreements. You're seeing companies that are not even related to power saying with Georgia Power, Duke Energy, Florida Power and Light, and so on, we'll take 100 acres, or even farmers getting involved. The new cash crop is power. The new cash crop is energy, where they'll say, we want to dedicate 100 acres, 200 acres, 1,000 acres for wind and solar. We'll pump it back into the grid at a fixed rate or at a variable rate or whatever. So we get money for creating clean energy for you, the utility. So there are many players now involved in this. It's starting to open up.
Okay, that's good news. Thanks.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charles Park. Before I start my presentation, I personally thank Professor Tarek and IBPSA Georgia Tech team for organizing this wonderful event. I'm very happy to see Mrs. Augenbroe and Augenbroe's beautiful daughter, Annika. I miss Claudia today. Okay, my presentation title is Innovation in Building Simulation for the Past Decades, mainly done by Professor Augenbroe. So today's talk is very relevant to my building simulation studies I have done with Professor Augenbroe between 98 to 21. The 98 is the year I admitted to Georgia Tech. So it has been almost 24 years. This is the picture in left side. I applied for U.S. college. I did some kind of web search at that time, and I found this photo at the Georgia Tech website. And his name is Godfried Augenbroe. As you know, many professors in college wearing very nice suit, having necktie, but he is holding the ice cream. So at that time, I thought Professor Augenbroe might be kind of a person with a warm heart, very kind to students, and maybe he likes eating ice cream. So I applied to Georgia Tech, and luckily I was admitted. So I started my journey with Professor Augenbroe up to 2019. He passed away 2021, last year. At that time, I didn't realize how great Professor Augenbroe was when I applied for Georgia Tech. But all the way down to the year 2015, he delivered the keynote speech, IBPSA World Conference. I think he was the only one person who delivered a keynote speech twice, IBPSA World Conference. That means very significant. He influenced a lot in our society. Also, he was selected as a recipient of IBPSA Distinguished Achievement Award. So IBPSA selects only one person for every 2 years who contributed significantly to our society. So Fried was kind of recognized as world-renowned influencing scholar in our domain. My first 2 years were spent to finish my coursework, attending classes in architecture and electrical engineering, industrial engineering. And after I finished the second year, Professor Augenbroe kindly encouraged me to do Ph.D. study on double skin facade system, as you can see in this slide. Double skin facade contains 2 envelopes, 2 glazing, and at the top, at the bottom, there are ventilation dampers, and inside the exterior interior glazing, there is a motorized roof system. He didn't want me to study about the double skin facade, but he wanted me to develop kind of a system reacting to occupant preference. For example, visual comfort, thermal comfort, energy saving, autonomous mode. So I started my PhD study, but I learned many lessons from the Professor Augenbroe. But the first lesson I learned from my PhD study is number one, he has a very strong belief. You should make simulation model, any simulation model, as simple as possible. So he always preferred to not to have over-engineering approach, but he want to make a model very simple and minimalistic model. So in order to understand the physical phenomena in the double skin facade, you need to understand the solar radiation, transmission, reflection, absorption, convection, cooling, but he didn't want to make it all detailed model. He taught me how to come up with a very simple model using state space model at that time. For solving unknown parameters in the simulation model, he suggested me to use numerical optimization to find unknown parameters. So by using state space modeling approach and do some numerical optimization to find the unknown parameters, I ended up with a simulation model whose accuracy is plus or minus 1.0 Celsius. And we published this paper at IBPSA conference in 2003 and ranked the second best paper in that conference. Lesson number two, I learned from Professor Augenbroe. He has a kind of ability to see future. At that time, this work was done 2002, almost 20 years ago. But he want to make this a system, internet-driven, cloud, web-based. So the way we do to make a system in internet-based is we put our simulation model inside the local server, and also there is an optimization engine. Local server can post all relevant data to the website, so users can select his preference operation mode, visual, thermal comfort, energy saving, autonomous mode. Also, local server can get data from the sensors, also send the signals to the motors to control the double skin facade. So this is the lesson I learned from Professor Augenbroe. He has a kind of ability to see the future. Luckily, due to his kind advice, I could finish my PhD in 2003, May. Also, he is a kind of a person to connect his students to very famous scholars. As from the second left, Jan Hansen, he is the IBPSA president for many years. Also, I met a wonderful professor from mechanical engineering, Zade, who wearing the blue shirt. Also, at the bottom, I met this guy, the Peter DeWalt. I call him the lemonade man. He visited Georgia Tech between 2001 and 2002, and we worked together. We started our friendship in almost 20 years. I really appreciate such a long, good friendship with Peter. And I also, your right side is my graduation ceremony, and Professor Augenbroe was kind enough to say congratulations to my wife. You can see at the top. This is a wonderful event. Lesson number three, when I finished my PhD, thesis work, I was slowly involved in the U.S.A. performance toolkit project. He wanted to develop kind of energy performance toolkit. But at that time, many people was fascinated by the full-blown dynamic simulation tools such as Energy Plus. But he had a different opinion. He thought in order to do some energy modeling, the model shouldn't be such a complex, over-engineered. So he suggested me to use NEN 2916, published in 1998. So, and I studied this material, and then the second picture is his handwriting explaining the meaning of NEN 2916 to me. So I scanned it. Later on, NEN 2916 was actually converted to ISO 139790. currently the worldwide energy rating standard. So, but many of you know, NEN 2916 was actually initiated by Professor Augenbroe in Dutch. Then his idea was now realized in ISO standard. This is the way the GSA Building Performance Toolkit was initiated. He wanted to develop kind of X-ray machine, X-ray toolkit, which can assess energy, lighting, daylighting, thermal comfort, performance of the building. As we visit the doctor when we get sick. But one prominent feature of the GSA toolkit is not simply the toolkit itself, but you want to make it objective assessment of any building, quick assessment, and reproducible assessment. That's the, I think, a very meaningful feature of the building performance assessment. So slowly, NEN 2916 started the Excel, and then it later on converted to the EPC, Georgia Tech EPC, and it was adopted a GSA in-house tool, also applied to many UPenn campus buildings, Georgia Tech campus buildings. Also, it was adopted as official, as far as I know, Qatar, one of the Middle Asian countries, just the toolkit. Also, Professor Augenbroe's idea was adopted as a Korean energy standard, which is based on ISO 13790. This is the screenshot of the Korean energy standard. We call it ECHO 2. One thing I want to mention, the Freeze contribution is the first book in our domain, Advanced Building Simulation, co-edited by Ali Markawi at Harvard and Godfried Augenbroe. There are many, many good chapters inside the book, but the chapter 1, the trends in building simulation, is one of my best favorite chapters. I keep emphasizing the importance of the ideas written in that chapter. But I want to mention maybe only one thing. Inside of that chapter, this is the lesson I learned by reading that chapter. In around 2001, 2, 3, U.S.A. government spent so much money, resources on developing kind of a tool which can be used by architects, designers. They were so much focused on, we can develop such a tool which can be used by the architects in the design process. But Professor Augenbroe has a different opinion. That kind of a tool cannot be developed due to several reasons described at the bottom. In order to make that kind of a tool, we have to reduce domain knowledge inside that kind of a toolkit. But that is impossible, he believed, because domain knowledge cannot be simply reduced inside the toolkit. Also, he predicted domain experts can be accessed via email or Zoom meeting, any other domain technology. So experts can be accessible anywhere, in any time. So why we need to develop such a tool? Also, the reason number 3, account issue. Architect can do some simulation, do some analysis, but nobody can trust analysis done by the designer. They trust something done by engineers. So rather than taking the left side approach, he predicted in the near future at that time, there are 4 approaches will be useful, A, B, C, D. So rather than developing such a designer-friendly toolkit, he was focused on developing kind of interface. Here, domain experts are available anywhere. So we need to develop kind of interface which can connect the domain experts to designers. This is the way he predicted the simulation toolkit trend. Lesson number 5. In the same book chapter, he also have very different opinion about the BIM. You know, the BIM, you know, is a kind of very fancy word, but he think BIM is too data-centric. Being too data-centric not necessarily wrong, but being too much data-centric means here, the building model must understand all software tools. Reason number 2, complete set of test cases almost impossible. The many other reasons exist. So rather than taking too much data-centric, he was so focused on we need to develop kind of process-centric approach depicted in the right side. The Peter Diwali is, I think, the expert in this area. He was involved in the DAI project, Design Analysis Interface project, funded by DOE 2002. So he was one of the main developers of this approach. So if you have any questions, go to Peter, not to me. And after finishing my postdoc contract with Professor Augenbroe, I left in 2005. This is a picture on the January 24th. This is Augenbroe is there. He invited my family and the students group to his house, and Professor Augenbroe kindly cooked a wonderful dish, sancocho, the Dominican Republic traditional dish. After I left Georgia Tech, I could opportunity to meet Professor Augenbroe in international conferences. So, for example, 2007, he visited China to attend the 2007 Building Simulation Conference. So we have a day trip together to visit the Great Wall in China. Not only we had meeting international conference, Professor Augenbroe kindly visited the South Korea several times. In 2010, he delivered a lecture in Korean University, in Sungkyunkwan University. I was working at that time. Not only he visited Korea, Peter and I paid annual visit between 2012 to 2019 for 8 years annually. So this is a picture we took together. Our annual visit usually starts in the Monday, right? Monday morning we sit together and chat. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Professor Augenbroe invited his MS, PhD students to deliver their research work. Also, we also presented our research work in UK and in South Korea. Usually Wednesday night, Thursday night, Professor Augenbroe invited the two of us to his house and having dinner together. It started with the appetizer and main dish, wine, coffee, ice cream. Yeah, we really enjoyed, not food. The time being with Professor Augenbroe was so good, so wonderful. Talking more than 3 hours, right? 2014, 2015, we visited together. This is at that time, he called it a BT group meeting in room 217 in old architecture building. Also, Fried attended the India IBPSA conference. At that time, he was delivered the keynote speech, also recipient of Distinguished Achievement Award. So he was surrounded by his group of students, also his colleagues from European countries, also South Korea. On the way back from the India to U.S.A., he visited Korea again to deliver the lectures to Korean students. During his stay in Korea, we had a wonderful time having dinner. As you can see in the photo, Dr. Sang-hoon Lee and Dr. Jenny Kim. And in the middle, you see my wife. Also, he visited one of the prestigious museum we call Lee-um, operated by Samsung. Nobody can access easily, but he was admitted to that museum. 2016, we visited again. At that time, I brought my research problem regarding federated model, and he kindly suggested his thought and his approach by writing down his ideas on the blackboard. And we took picture together, 2016. Also, BT group meeting, we had it together. 17, Peter was a little bit heavier. Can you recognize? 18, 19. Peter was smiling at that time.